Here comes Jason.
Thank you.
And our time is ready to start. Welcome back, Jason. Great to have you again, and we'll give you 45 minutes and start it right now.
Okay, thank you very much. So kind of same as before, I'll just see if I can nab my Colt, and then we'll go ahead and get rolling here. I'm just going to send him around. He's probably not going to stand real great at this end of the arena, so I'm going to send him down that way a little bit. That's right. I'm just going to give him a second maybe to get turned around there.
Just a side note for you guys watching, Jason is the only one who has not used any extra time. Both the other trainers have used a little bit more, so he has a time bank of an extra 20 minutes if he feels the need to use them here today. Or 10, he can only use up to 10. But he could use an extra 10 minutes today if you want to, Jason.
All right, sounds good. And I'm pleading ignorance here, but I can take up to how many minutes without that being a penalty?
10.
Oh, full 10?
Yep.
All right. Sounds good. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and get rolling. I'm just going to walk around with this Colt for just a second. I've done a bit of the tarp stuff with him. I do tend to lead them over, maybe more than send them over, but I do kind of keep an eye on them as I do it, just in case they spook, jump forward, and I don't want them coming over on top of me. But I find just because their halter broke, I just find it a shade easier to lead them over obstacles if I can help it. I'm just going to ask this Colt to move around me. First day, he was pretty darn sticky about this part. Every little session, he got just a little bit better. So there he's kind of flowing out a little bit nicer. I've got so many obstacles in here that it's a little bit tricky. That's pretty good. Yield the hind end, just kind of like so, soft as I can. I'm just going to have this guy go around me over here. This is usually the side he's just a little stickier on. I don't care about getting it a lot better than it was. I just want a little wee bit better every session. So that right there is pretty darn soft compared to the other day when he didn't want to move around me at all. So that's pretty good there. This Colt, if anyone was around for the earlier sessions, he kind of shows his resistance through his head and neck a lot. So when he doesn't like something, he kind of shoves with his face and thrashes around a little bit. I'm just going to play around with that for a second. I'm going to put my left hand on the bridge of his nose, hook my thumb underneath the halter just so it doesn't slip away. Right hand's going here just behind his pole. I'm just going to start gently rocking his face side to side. And as soon as I feel him soften even a little bit, I just stop and kind of rub on him. So I'm just going to play with this for a second, and I think it will take him maybe a minute, because this is the thing that he does not like in the world, is his head messed with. If he starts backing up like he is right here, I'm going to try to go with him as best I can. But as soon as he finds a little spot to soften, that was very, very small, but I just need something. I'm just going to keep messing with this. Head goes there, little spot there. And I'm probably going to come back and mess with this a few times. There. So he kind of lowered from that. He goes into my hand. I just put a little more pressure on my left hand so he can't walk forward. I'm just going to rock that head and neck side to side. And as soon as he releases even a tiny bit, I'm just going to wait on him. And this is probably going to take a little longer on him than some of them, just because this is sort of where his tension builds. So I'm going to wait on that one. He gave a tiny bit there at the end, and I let go. I'm not actually taking my hands away because that can kind of spook them. I just soften my hands. Now, right, almost. A little side to side. Almost. There. There's a tiny, tiny one. Pretty darn small, but just something for me to reward. There, that was hands down the best one so far. Do this again. A little bit there, that was almost more bending away from me. Okay, almost felt like he was going to do it there, but then he backed up. There. I'm not going to let him go backwards if I can help it. Just want him to drop his nose a hair there. I keep saying I'm just going to do it one more time, but I would like a little bit better one out of him than maybe what he's given me. So I'm just going to mess with this just a second longer. Little bit, not very special. I'm just going to stop there for a minute, and I'm going to come back to that after a couple minutes. So I got a few tiny, tiny releases, not exactly a big difference, but just something for me to start with. Throw the pad on. If he wants to move, he's allowed to move, but I'll just keep throwing the pad until he stops again. So I'm not going to stop just because he shuffles around. Also, I might pad on it here a little bit. Come over here. Just going to wait for him to get stopped. I'd like him to stay still. Now I'm going to start getting a little bit pickier about him standing once the actual saddle goes on. He's not been terrible about it, but he could be a little bit better. Just going to hold here. I'm going to run the back of my hand down his belly so that he kind of feels that coming so I don't surprise him if I reach under there too quickly. Same as the other day. Once you get the saddle started, go ahead and get it on. Don't kind of mess around in that area very much. Just hurry up and get it done up in case they do something you don't want them to do. As long as you get your front stitch done up reasonably well, you're probably in pretty good shape. So I'm happy with that part. Now, I'm just going to take him again and move him around. I'm going to put the rest collar up first. So far here, this Colt, he's done very, very well with me. My overall impression of him is he's a really nice horse. I do like the fact that he is fairly forward. He steps out quite nice. He is one, I think, though, that if you went in there and had some unnecessary fights with him, I think he's kind of the type that would sort of take that personal. So with most of the things with him, if he doesn't like something, I tend to just sort of chip away at it a little bit and then leave it alone and come back to it later. I don't really feel that if I jump down his throat over something that it would work out real well in the end. So I just want this guy to move around here, carry the saddle. Partly is just to make sure there's no kinks in here. And partly too is I tend to not do the saddle up at full tightness. So I just want to let him move around, work at any tension in there, and then I'm going to draw the saddle up once or twice more. And this Colt does tend to kind of swell up just a little bit. So usually I've done the saddle up, I've tightened it at least 3 times every time before I've gotten on him. Although to be honest, he doesn't feel like he's just quite as tight this morning as he was those other days. So that's pretty good there. I'll send him once the other way. There we go. Now I'm going to yield the hindquarters.
You got your own little obstacle course out there.
Kind of like so. Yep. I can't run that fast.
You're taking big steps. Wow.
Should have brought your Nikes.
Yeah. Now he's just showing me up. Now I thought I had that done up, but apparently didn't. Snap kind of tightened up on me there. So I'm going to go ahead now. I'm just going to lead him quickly over a couple of these things. Again, he's pretty good with them. So I might not need to spend a whole lot of time on this. I'm not just sure. We'll see. That's pretty good. Just kind of go off the side here so we can maybe avoid my tack. And this guy has not been terrible about the bridge, but he sometimes gets on and gets crooked and kind of falls off the side. So I'd like to get it where he's just maybe being just a hair straighter for me as we go along here. So I believe, I'm not positive, but I think in the final part, the rails are raised. I'm not positive about that, but I'm going to do it anyways, just in case. And if they're not, it isn't going to hurt anything. So put that over there. Kind of like so. Same as yesterday. I'm just going to test him with the whip on the ground. Try it on this side. Then I'm going to go across the front so he sees it out of both eyes. Wasn't too bad. I'm going to switch over here. I'd like to put his bridle on. Now, it is easier to put the bridle over the halter. One of the announcers made fun of me yesterday and said that's not very cowboy, making it harder on everyone, namely me.
Wasn't me.
Yes,
You're
I know
wondering.
it wasn't you.
His initials are Hugh McLennan.
Well, just that old cowboy pride thing, you know, where I will never be seen riding a horse while I'm wearing a ball cap or running shoes or anything like that.
I noticed one little thing. You're not riding a horse here at all, so it's easier to say that.
I can say anything I want.
You can come up with anything.
Exactly.
You know, I've noticed that very thing this trip, too. I can say a lot of things because I don't have to get out there and do it this time.
Will not get on my horse and ride away from the yard without a rope on my saddle and a knife on my belt.
There you go. Well, I can't rope and I don't have a knife, so I'm really batting zero here today.
Probably don't let you on a plane with a big knife, do they?
Yeah, no, that part's probably true. So I'm going to just throw this equipment over here. We kind of got so much stuff that we're getting ready for that it kind of makes it where I'm constantly moving stuff around, just getting ready for the next thing. So that's pretty decent. I'm just going to step on this boy. Again, I would like him to stand still. If he moves off, the first day I kind of tolerated that, but now I would like to get it where that's not as much of a thing. Just grab my little stick in case he gets stuck. Apparently this is a fairly sticky one. So again, now I mentioned it yesterday, I like to have it where the left foot is farther forward than the right foot, just because it'll hold that horse up and balance a little bit better. I'm just gonna back him up a few times on the ground first though anyways, because he is a little sticky in his back up, but you can kind of see there today, he is getting a little bit softer than what he was the other day. So this is one of those things again, I didn't harp on it too much at any one point, but I just tried to get a little bit better each time, and now it's kind of helping. Now he sometimes swings his butt away from me, so I'm gonna use the fence here a little bit, so he has no choice but to stay straight. I should have lied about that part, no choice. He found another option. There. So that's pretty decent. Thank you. Again, I'm just gonna wait on him to get stopped. I'll just wait on him again.
As the years go by, that stirrup gets higher and higher and higher.
Now I'm just going to wait for 30 seconds. I'll just kind of scratch on him. I don't really want to hold him here, but I'm doing just enough that he isn't going to leave. And then I'm going to ask him to leave. I'm not going to wait for him to wander off. I'll stay here and then make leaving my idea. Kind of like so. So I'm just going to cruise around on him for a minute. I'm probably not going to ask for much of anything. Anyone that's been here has seen that this colt loves to get stuck at this gate. So as long as we're not there, being honest, I'm kind of happy. He can sort of do whatever he wants. Just let us wander around and he can get the feel of me. A lot of times, well, pretty much every horse I'm riding, whether it's a trained one or someone, young colt that doesn't know anything, I usually always start the sessions walking around for a minute or so, just because I'd like to begin every training session on a relaxed note. Having said that, if you have a real high energy horse, once they've worked around a little bit, sometimes you got to do something to kind of use up a little energy. But if possible, I always kind of like to start out nice and slow. So at some point here, I'm going to trot this colt around. I'll just maybe give him a second longer, and then we'll start playing with that. First, I might work on a little bit of steering. Yesterday, this colt was bracing a lot, but here he is kind of turning around pretty decent and guiding a lot smoother than he was there yesterday. I'm going to go over these raised rails. Then I'm going to go over here, maybe start playing around, turning him to the right just a little bit. I don't necessarily need his front end to move over and cross over, but if I get that, that's great. But if I don't, a small circle is honestly good enough. So I'm just going to start playing around here to the right. I just give little pulls and releases. Every time he gives to the bridle, I just kind of let go again. Get him walking a little circle, soft as I can, and then step out of it. Now I'm just going to go the other way. I might ask this guy to trot now. So just cruise around at the trot. Now we're going to jump something. Now I'm going to work on the stops, kind of like so. So I'm happy with that part there. Again, this horse had quite a bit of brace through the head and neck. So certain things like the stop were actually a little bit harder for him because he kind of liked to lean into that pressure. So the fact that he's stopping from the trot, I'm happy with that part. Just gonna step out this way. Same thing, we'll maybe do a lap, maybe a lap and a half, and then I'll see if I can get him to stop somewhere over there. Now I'm gonna ask him to stop. Kind of like so. I'm tickled with that part there. I'm going to work on his turns just a little bit. I'm going to roll him back into the fence like I did the other day. And the thing I like about rolling back into the fence is the fence can do half your work for you. As long as I come in on the proper angle and steer him into the fence will kind of guide him around. So it basically lets me teach him to steer without pulling on his mouth nearly as much as I would have to if I was out in the open. And I'd like to feel what you kind of see right there where his front end moves over instead of the whole horse's body going. So I'd like to see the front end move here again. So that wasn't half bad there. I'll maybe do it one more time, and then we'll do something slightly different. So I'll just kind of roll back, move the front end over, and that's pretty good there. Once in a while, he gets a little stuck, so I don't want that stuff. So I'm going to stop him again. I want to work on softening his head and neck a little bit more like I did the other day. I'm going to reach down here, see if I can bend him to the side, kind of like what you see right there. He's being pretty soft through his mouth, through his head and neck, I should say. I'll bring him back. This was his really stiff side, and that isn't very stiff anymore, in my opinion anyways. Do it another couple times. You might move here. I'll just hold. Again, if you saw him the other day, when I tried to bend him right, head went up, mouth opened up, all that kind of stuff. And today he's giving pretty nice to that. So I think that part there is sort of important. I'm going to go around here over these raised rails now. And just kind of play with this for a second. I'm going to cross to my right and then approach and try to cross the bridge at full width. Because again, this guy tends to fall off the bridge a little bit, so instead of crossing on the skinny side, I'm going to cross on the wide side a few times where he can't sneak off just maybe quite as much as he did before. Might as well cross this tarp while I'm at it too. Good. Now another thing we have to do is get these horses moving off pressure. I think that's one of the requirements. So he is moving off pretty good as far as rein pressure. I'm going to play around moving off leg a little bit, which I touched on the other day, but I want to get a little bit more into it. I'm going to draw his face left, left leg back, squeeze on him, and see if I can move his hip here over to the right. Kind of like so. I'll do this one more time. And he moved front and back a little bit there, but again, I'm just looking for things to be happy about, not things to be unhappy about. Got a little bit out of position. I feel like you could do a hair better. There. That one I'm pretty tickled with. So that way there you can start getting the move off one leg at a time. A lot of times with horses, when you start squeezing with one leg and you mean move over, they just think go forward, go forward, go forward. So that's an exercise you can do to start getting them thinking about which leg they're moving off of, not just pushing ahead and going faster all the time. So at some point here, I'm just going to steer him up, stop him again, and move his hip the other direction if I could. I've got so much junk in this round pen, it's hard to find open spots. But I'm going to bend this horse now to the right, soften, right leg back. I'm just going to start lightly bumping on him. And there goes the hip, a heck of a lot better than it did yesterday. Over here.
We have allowed, Jason, if you want to pause time to get some of that stuff out of there, you can do that too if you start feeling like you want to open up the round pen.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Thank you for that. What do you want to bet? There's an old saying, a cowboy never gets someone else to move his stuff out of the ring or something like that that's going to come back and haunt me here.
I feel like I would have somebody do it if I was you.
There you go. So that hip moved around pretty darn nice that time, so I'm very happy with that. I'm going to get away from that now because I feel like that was sort of a struggle for him to figure out, and he's got it a couple times on each side, so I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm going to maybe have this colt lope around a little bit here if he would. Then I'm going to work on his stops now.
I'm surprised this colt hasn't been sold yet. If you guys are looking, look at the way this horse moves around that round pen. He's going to have some run in there.
Hopefully not too much this afternoon. I'm just going to steer him the other way, kind of using that fence. Step him around. I'm going to ask him to lope off this way. One thing I've intentionally been doing every day, I lope around on him a little bit, but not for very long. I find that if you do a lot of loping on them, it's great, but in one of these competitions, sometimes then you don't have a horse with a whole lot left in them. So I'm working on just enough that I feel like I touch on it every day, but not enough that I feel like I'm going to get him tired from it. So I try to keep it somewhat to a minimum without skipping over it. So I'm going to have him cruise around here. At some point, we'll try to pick up a canter on the left lead. Work on the stops, kind of like so. And this colt, as he does have a lot of go, which in a lot of ways is great. You get it where they can go over things, they get a lot of forward, that's really nice. The one problem is sometimes they don't have great stopping on them. So even though he has a lot of go, now I'm trying to play around with making sure I can turn it on and off, not just have him going all the time and being a little bit impatient about it. Because I think he's one that could be a little antsy. When I stop him, I tend to stop him for short little periods of time, just have him there long enough that I've kind of done the job, and then I get away from it and keep moving around again. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I want him to start to appreciate these stops. I'm not just going to hold him still. I'm going to keep him there just long enough that he sort of enjoyed it and then get gone again before he thought he should leave. So what I'm going to do now is start playing around with backing up just a little bit. I'm going to pick up on him, pick up on his face. Every time he takes a little step backwards, I'm just going to release on that. He was a wee bit bracy there, so I'm just going to give him a second, pet on him. I might walk forward and then stop and back him up again. Now, again, he likes to get a little funny with his face, so every time he kind of gets shaken around a little bit, I don't fight with it, but I just steer him to the side or something just to give him something else to think about here. So I'm going to stop him. I'm going to see if we can't back up a little bit more this time. So right there, he dropped his nose, so I released. That's a little bit too bracy. There. That was a wee bit better. A little bit better. What I'm going to do with him, because he is getting a little stickier in this than I want, I'm going to swing him around, ride him straight at a fence panel and stop him there so that forward motion isn't an option. So I'm going to ride right out here. And then I want one of you to take something and throw it at us. So get ready, 1, 2, 3, go. Back. And I'm just going to pick up on him. He's kind of bracing me there. Kind of rock him there. So even though his head went up and all that, I'm only worrying about his feet. That was a little bit better. That was a wee bit better, not a lot. That was better again. And again, this guy here, he's just kind of revealing that braciness. There, there, there. That was a lot better on his part. And it might not look real special, but that's something he struggles with just a wee bit. So I'm tickled again when he does that stuff right. So I'm just going to play around here for a second, bang away on this just a little bit, just because I do tend to use the bullwhip as a desensitizing tool. Again, we have to swing a rope off these guys, and I find that I'm just a little handier with the whip than I am the rope. I'm just going to move the stick out of the way here. So swing around. I'll just start cracking a little bit. Now he woke up. Going to turn him here. If my marks are bad, this is my one chance to do something about it. I'll cruise around here. I'll do this just a few more times. I don't want to do it to the point that it's annoying to him, but I want to make sure he's good with it. Something too, with the whips, obviously it's something that's not necessary, but if you're ever riding along and somebody shoots off a gun in the forest or a car backfires or something like that, it's a way to get them used to something that kind of comes out of the blue. And so just some of this stuff is surprising how much it can get your Colt quiet if you play with it and approach it properly. So that's pretty decent there. I'm just going to take, he's a little sensitive on his butt, I've noticed. So not that that's a big deal, but sometimes when they're a little touchy about their hind end, that's one that might think about kicking out or bucking a little bit. I'm just going to ride around for just a second, putting pressure here. Now, unless you're going to ride double, it's probably not going to matter that much. But having said that, it's just a ticklish spot he has. You'll kind of notice he speeds up as soon as I put pressure back here. So I'm just going to ride around and let him feel that until he kind of gets good with it. Just kind of cruise around. I'm just going to rub on him. And then I think he's doing pretty good with that one there. Now what I'm going to start to do is what I call mark training. And if you've never heard of mark training, what that basically is, it's when you teach a horse to go to an object. So that would maybe be a place that would be practical, would be at something like on a movie set where you have a loose Liberty horse that needs to go somewhere and stand on a mark, kind of the way an actor would. What you do with that one is just work your horse around somewhere, it doesn't really matter where, and then rest them on whatever it is you want that horse to go to. So I'm just going to kind of steer him around a little bit, make him do a little bit of work. I don't want to press on him very much, but I just kind of hustle him around. Then I'm going to go rest him on something that I want him to be a little bit drawn to. So we're just going to stop him on the tarp and give him a little break here. Now, I don't know if anybody was at the trailer loading clinic we had there a few minutes ago, but that was something I was playing with there. I would take and work the horse outside the trailer, rest them in the trailer. Work them outside the trailer and rest them in the trailer. After a while, you start to teach them that the trailer is the happiest place in the world. We're a little short on time, so I probably don't have enough time to really make this sink in big time with this colt, but I can play with it. I can take him out here, guide around a little bit, just make him do a little bit of work, and then take him back to whatever it is I want him to be drawn to. Using this, you can start making things that would be scary to horses actually very rewarding to horses. Anything you want them to like, rest them there. Anything you don't want them to like, work them there. It's a pretty simple concept, but it can do a lot of good if you sort of apply it in your day-to-day work. I'm just going to do this one more time. I just wanted to touch on it so that everybody kind of got an idea what I was thinking, because I know sometimes people see us do a little bit of the Liberty stuff and the Mark stuff, so I just wanted to cover a little bit of it. But again, I'll just kind of have this colt hustle around. He likes to get stuck at this gate, so I'm not letting him have any little breaks here. And then I'm going to ride him onto the tarp and stop him again. And then I want to just make sure I really rub and pet on him and let him relax here, because again, instead of this tarp being a scary place, I want this to be the thing that he's actually looking and hunting for. I could do the exact same thing with the bridge, other tarps, or any other object in here. It just takes too long to do all of them in a 45-minute session, so you'll kind of have to use your imagination with the others, but that's sort of the idea. Now, I'm going to play around with backing up one more time, and then I'm going to change up my backup routine. I'm going to get off, back him up from the ground a couple times. Whoa. Back. 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 So again, not spectacular, but better than what it was. I'm just going to walk forward, maybe do this once more. Back. 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 And that was probably his best one yet. So I'm pretty tickled with that part. Now, I said I was going to get off, but just before I do that, I'm going to play around with 1 second here, getting this colt to steer around at a slightly faster speed, because he was steering pretty good at the walk, but I'd like to make sure I do have a little steering on him once we go just a hair faster. I'm going to use my little stick just to kind of keep him hustling. I might go up here, kind of pause, and then roll him back into the fence here at some point, kind of like so. One thing is in here, sometimes you can kind of, I think, maybe have a little false confidence because the walls hold us in. So sometimes it feels like you have steering on your colt, and then you go out to the big ring and you're kind of all of a sudden you're all over the map and kind of traveling around making snake trails everywhere. So I do like to take in the pen and try to just do a little steering at the trot just to kind of help them get the idea across here. So I'm just going to step off here for a second. I'm going to back this colt up a couple more times on the ground. I'm going to do it from here though, because I want in the position as if I was riding him. Now this time I'm not going to let him get as crooked as much. So if he tries to swing his hip away from me, I'm going to do what you see here, where I pull his nose to the right. I don't know if we're getting on the stuff over here or not, but actually I'm going to turn him so that he has the fence beside him on that side, so he can't get quite as crooked on me. And again, you're kind of seeing that with his face show up just a wee bit there, but again, that's something I just kind of keep chipping away at over the course of all the sessions. So I'm going to play around here again. I'm going to put pressure on the reins, kind of where I would sit on him. I would hold my hand somewhere in this area. A little stuck there, so I'm going to hold one rein steady, and I'm going to rock the other rein. And again, he's a little stuck, so this might take him a second. And as soon as he gives any release at all, that one wasn't a release. I'll give him another second, and then I'm going to make a little change here. There. Not great. but I'm gonna back him up from this front position a couple times. There, there, there. Okay, and I'm gonna come back to that other part later in just a second. So I need my one little stick here.
Just so you know where we're at, Jason, we've got 10 minutes left in the 45-minute session before we start your final 10.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yep.
You don't have to take that extra 10 too, but it's penalty free if you do take that extra 10 minutes.
Okay.
See where you're at the end.
Now, I got on the plane. I could not fit a training stick in my bag. So I was here without one, so I bought a Jonathan Field training stick. If this goes bad, talk to him. They're faulty. So I'm just gonna play around with this Colt here for a second. Before I start playing with steering, I'm maybe just gonna get him to kind of trot around. Oh, go wherever you want, just go. So I'm gonna have him trot out here in a sec. At some point here, I'm gonna ask him to canter off, preferably on the right lead, obviously. Then I'm gonna sit down a little deep and see if he'll slow down for me. See if I can stop him here if I sit deep enough. And by stop, I meant slow walk. I'm just gonna guide him around and get him to change directions here in a second. I'm gonna try to find a spot where I can swing pretty wide. I don't really wanna do it at the gate here. And again, this Colt likes to turn back that way. We're gonna jump something now, all my idea. Actually, we'll just get steered here in a second. I'm gonna have you just turn over here a little bit. I'm gonna have to talk to Jonathan about the stick.
Some of these Colts are smooth enough that eventually you wouldn't have to post the trot. I'll sit the trot, but if I have to, I'll certainly post it. And when I do that, it's really popular because I go to my Facebook page and all kinds of people are saying, hey, thank you for posting.
I'm gonna sit down. And I'm gonna stop anywhere here except at the gate again. There. So just for something fun to do with them, thank you. I'm just gonna steer around a little bit with the stick. I don't really wanna tap them on the nose very much. I'm just gonna kind of motion up here like that if I can. First time or two sometimes takes them a second to figure it out. But once they get it, a little trick here, instead of swinging it side to side, sometimes if you come in with a little bit of a round action and then hold it up, they'll figure it out. Let's see if I can hit a rail or two. Exactly like I said, one rail. See if I can hit this tarp here. I'm really gonna stop calling out what I'm about to do. I'm noticing that's a bad idea. You don't know what I want. And that's, again, I'm just gonna cruise around for a second on him. I might lope around one more time or something along that line. and then I'm going to get off and do a couple different things. But this part here, I think it's surprisingly good for him because he doesn't feel any tension really. He's getting used to me. I'm not holding him back. I'm not holding him in. If he wanted to run off and throw me off, he actually has full capability. I'm going to be quite honest, I don't ride bucking horses that well. And so this is sort of the fact that he's doing this quite well. I'm pretty happy with it. So again, I'm going to lope around maybe one more time, and then we'll play with something else here in a second. I'm going to try to line him up over there and lope off somewhere about that section. So I'll try and lope off about now. I'll set deep, see if he'll kind of slow down here. Good. And I'll just walk out of this area and then kind of look for a place to get off. Ten out of 10? Huh? Oh, thank you.
You have just under 4 minutes to claim them extra 10 minutes. Do you want them, Jason?
So if I understand this right, I have 4 minutes left in my training session. If I announce it now, I can have 10 more minutes and there's no penalties whatsoever.
And you don't have to use all of the 10, but I wanted to tell you that if you don't claim them before your session is over, I can't give them to you.
Okay, no, fair enough. Are you guys sick of me yet?
You're not asking me, are you?
Now I'm not. Kind of pre-warned me with that one.
I would take them. You got no ding for it.
Yeah. Okay, I tell you what, I think I'll go ahead and take it. I'm actually not going to do a whole lot more, but I just will have that time to kind of have a little bit of quiet time, I guess you could say. Take him here. Let's see if we can do the noodle thing. Actually, I should have done this with a bridle on, now that I'm thinking about it, that I'm here. Yes, we're going to disassemble the noodles when we go through that obstacle. That's how I plan to fix that. Now, in a perfect world, I'd like to get off somewhere other than the gate, but this is kind of where he keeps going back to, so I might take this exit anyways. Also, we're going to dig our way out. Good fellow. Thank you. Now, I just got to find some of my stuff again because I keep dropping it everywhere.
Yeah, well.
All right. Stop him here. Now, one thing I mentioned earlier, he does tend to fall off the side of the bridge a bit. So I'll kind of play with that for just a second. Again, I'd like him to lower his nose just a hair. No, wrong way, wrong way, wrong way, wrong way. Okay, there's tiny, tiny, tiny bit. That was pretty minimal. There. Not a lot, but when he kind of dropped his head, he almost kind of did it to flip his face, but as soon as it came down, I kind of let go anyways. There. It didn't really look it, but he softened instantly on that one, which is the first time he's really done that to any real degree. So I'm going to take and try to have you step on here. This Colt should have been a contortionist. Yep. There. And kind of like I mentioned there with the mark training, I can kind of do a sort of version of this just by being here. All I have to do is let him relax. If I just pet on him a little bit, though, it just makes it that much.
There's your 45 minutes gone right now, Jason, so we'll start the other one and
Okay.
count it down for 10 minutes.
So I'm just going to give him a few minutes there just to kind of relax and think that that was the place to be. This isn't training as in that I'm doing anything really, but sometimes just standing there, getting out of the way and letting them get comfortable is more training than actually riding around doing something. So I just want him to have his minute to understand that getting on that bridge was a pretty good idea. And again, I'll kind of with him, I scratch him a little bit more on the withers when I want to reward him, just because again, he doesn't love his face being handled, so I just keep picking away at it gradually. But I find with this guy here, when I rub him back here, he tends to relax a lot more than when I'm petting on his face. So if that's kind of his terms at the moment, I can live with that. So just kind of rub around there. I'm going to take him off here now and maybe bring him on one more time from the other side. There. So I'm happy with that right there. Again, I want him, thank you. I want him to get rewarded from this as much as possible. I want him taking his breaks here because instead of just getting him over something, I want to get it where he's actually drawn to it. That's when things kind of get a little bit fun. Just while he's having a little break, does anybody have any questions that they're kind of thinking about? It can be related to this colt or colt starting in general. Doesn't really matter, but if there's anything anybody's thinking on or any questions you have, just let me know. All right. I'm going to go with no. One thing I do want to warn you, I was riding around there bridleless. You got to be careful if you ever see somebody doing that. I'm not saying don't do it, but you got to do it in a safe way. I'll give you an example. One time I was involved in a horse trade. There was this really cute girl. She had a horse. I traded horses with her. She told me it rode bridleless. I got on. I was riding around. The horse does real well. I took the bridle off. It jumped to the side, threw me off, and ran away. And I thought, damn, you can't trust anyone these days. Kind of stupid on my part, though. I got married to her shortly after that. So, anyways, watch out, especially for her. Oh, little rail got in my way there. Good. And again, I'll just kind of pet on him. I'm going to take him off here and just pull his tack off just because I don't necessarily feel that it's helping my cause anymore. I think he's got the idea. He's wearing the saddle comfortably. And again, we do still have a fair bit to get through this afternoon. And it's kind of, in a way, I said I'd take the extra 10 minutes. And I'm just using that as relaxing time because any more training, I think, is actually going to get in my way instead of help me. Because he's done so good for me. And the problem is sometimes when they do really well, you're thinking I can get just a little bit more out of this one. And that's kind of sometimes when you ask for one little bit too much. I feel like about 90% of the time I've gotten into trouble is when I said I'm going to do something just one more time. So I'm trying not to do that with this guy. I feel like every box that I needed to check with him, we pretty much got done. So I'm not really looking to add any more training. I'm just kind of spending quality time with him at this point. This guy here, he's a super nice horse. I don't think he's one that just gives his trust out instantly to people. I think you have to earn it a little bit, but I feel like he's such a good horse that when you get it, you're really, really going to have something kind of special. So I don't want to take advantage of that. I want to do the best by him, and I feel like kind of not going beyond much what I've done here. I feel at this moment anyways is the best thing. Having said that, if I get on the finals, he runs off and throws me off, I'm going to wish we ran around a lot more in here. So I'm going to play around maybe with his feet for just a second. So I'm going to pick them up. This time here, I'm going to make it a little bit more like we're actually doing something. Last time there, I was picking up his feet by just kind of enough that They were off the ground. This time I want to make sure he's a little bit more solid about it all. Just kind of wiggling here. Tap on the foot. Down on him. So, reach around. Just going to play with his face just a second.
Yesterday, you and I, Jason, were talking about how hard it is to get a colt over to pick up the log, or pick up the rope to drag the log.
Yep.
I have a copy of the final sheets here, and unless I'm completely blind, I don't think you have to drag the log this year.
Oh, good.
But you do have to swing a rope.
Yeah. That's good because I usually end up dragging myself around instead of the log. There. Now he's kind of backing up sometimes as he lowers his head just a hair. There. Hands down my favorite one so far. All right, now I'm just going to walk him around. I'm just going to have him kind of pass these noodles a few times because we do have to go through those. I only have so long left, but I'm just not going to harp on about it. But I just want him to go by, feel them on his side. And again, something else, and I think probably a lot of you know this, but anytime your horse is curious, they can't be curious and all that scared at the same time. They can be a touchy, but they're not going to be that bad about it. So anytime they kind of investigate something, I want them to get used to. If they're sniffing it, pawing on it, playing with it, anything like that, I tend to just leave them alone because I look at it, they're kind of figuring it out on themselves. And if I believe I have this right, in the finals, I think we have this on both sides. Or I'm just going to, in the finals, wait for him to take it down. Either works for me. I don't really care. So I'm just going to ride him, pull him past this side. Then I'm just going to do that on the other side. And I think that'll probably be good enough as far as the noodle part goes.
There's 3 minutes left on the clock if you need it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if I ride him out of the pen, sorry, what was the rest of that? What the question is, would I ride him out today? I have to in a couple hours, so I'm hoping yes. Yes, yeah, okay, outside. That is kind of a good question. So when it comes to can you ride your horse outside, how long does that take? I think it depends a lot on the horse. If you have one that's kind of running, that's going really fast, you don't have much for brakes, kind of a little bit tricky, I stay in the pen a little bit longer. If you have a horse that's very sticky, they don't like to move out, as quick as I can, I try to get out to the wide open because the more they see open area, the more it just kind of encourages them to step forward. So with him in particular, I feel like he's stepping out nice enough and I feel he steers enough that yes, I would be willing to go out and ride him in a field if I was at home training on this colt, so yes. And that, but basically the stickier they are, the faster I want outside, the more I feel like they may take over control a little bit, the longer I want to stay in a smaller area just for safety purposes. Does that kind of answer your question? Okay. I'm just going to play around with one more thing here. I'd like him just to back up from that pressure there, just kind of like so. I'm going to use the halter to help me a little bit. There. Getting a little crooked. Anything with him with backing, he's a little bit resistant to it. So right there, sometimes I find if I mess with this, I can get the idea across of backing up without pulling on their face. So actually when you kind of watch him step back from that, he's doing it in some ways better than he was when he had the bridle on. So it's still teaching the same concept, I'm just coming at it from a little different angle.
1 minute to go, Jason, 1 minute.
Thank you.
All right.
So there. There. So that was pretty decent. Now, being totally honest, thank you. So with 1 minute left, the only thing I can think of is There's a guy that went to the doctor. The doctor said, I have bad news. You're going to die. You have 1 minute to live. The guy said to him, that's absolutely terrible. Is there anything you can do for me? And the doctor said, yeah, I could probably boil you an egg. So other than that, I think I'm going to quit at that note. We'll put this guy away. Really tickled with him. Thank you very much.